I think we're ready to get started. Hey, everybody. I'm going to talk slow because I see folks are still hopping on. My name is Brian Anderson, and I'm with Eagle Technologies. And today we're going to be talking about Nasuni. The gentleman doing the heavy lifting today is Tom Rose, VP of Technical Solutions at Nasuni. Tom, you want to come off mute and say hi?
Absolutely, Brian. Good to be here. Yes, as you said, I'm Tom Rose, Vice President of Technical Solutions at Nasuni. I am coming to you today live from our Boston-based headquarters, and really happy to be able to talk with you today, Brian, and introduce the Nasuni File Data Platform, our hybrid cloud storage offering to your customers.
All right, so look at this very large agenda. This looks complex. It's pretty simple. I'm going to start out with just a couple slides. I'm going to talk a little bit about Eagle, and then I'm going to segue into a slide that I've affectionately titled Stealing Tom's Thunder. Just wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about why Eagle chose to partner with Nasuni and the value that we see in the product. Then I'm going to hand it over to Tom. He's going to do that overview. One point I want to make is, I've got the Q&A showing here at the end, but I would really encourage folks to ask questions as they pop into your brain. So as many of you probably already know, Eagle's been around for 42 years. We're a really engineering heavy company. We take pride in the fact that we don't just carry every product, right? We're not an a la carte VAR. We actually think it's our responsibility to go out there and perform due diligence and find products that are the best in their solution sector or that solve a problem better than everyone else. But more recently, I like to joke that I want to go back to the good old days where we only had to worry about SANs failing or someone accidentally deleting, a bunch of VMs. Because nowadays we have nation state hackers and organized crime syndicates trying to invade your data center and hold your data hostage. So we've seen the industry as a whole adopt this term defense in depth. It's the notion that you need to recognize that they may be able to get past a couple of layers and you have to work hard to stop them at every layer. Eagle likes to talk a lot about recovery in depth. It's the notion that you need backups or copies of your data for different purposes. You may need a copy that's targeted for immutability. You may need a copy that's targeted for geographic separation. And just as importantly, you need to be able to bring your data back online quickly. So you're going to need some sort of technology or solution that recognizes that. Of course, internally, we talk about how that means design in depth. And without carrying on too long, it just means at a really high level that every solution you evaluate or adopt, and even every setting that you change in an application, is an opportunity to either improve or degrade not only your security posture, but just your recoverability in general. So that's the way that Eagle does it. We feel like it's really important. It's really kind of the polar opposite of working with a bunch of subject matter experts that are only focused on one solution. So normally at this point, I go over those 5 bullets in the bottom right, but I'm actually going to reference them in the next presentation slide. So let's just get to that. So here we are, Tom. I'm going to steal your thunder. Are you ready?
Go for it.
So I've got some really cool high-level stuff here, but I really wanted to kind of talk about 2 different points. Nasuni is one of my favorite products to talk about. But what always surprises me is how often I bring up Nasuni, and that's because it solves a lot of problems with unstructured files. So for instance, I meet a lot of customers that have large data sets of unstructured files, and they have a lot of pain around backup and restoration. Sometimes it's just financial, right? It's costly to have a replica array and a third-party backup. Lots of times it's physics related, right? They're worried they can't restore their data fast enough. Well, Nasuni comes up a lot in those conversations because, as Tom's going to talk about, you can see videos online where Nasuni can restore literally millions or billions of files almost instantly. We also often talk to customers about the pain around ransomware, both mitigating the threat and recovering quickly. Once again, Tom's going to talk about not only how they can restore a ton of files instantly, but how they have capabilities to detect it, to mitigate the bad actor, and then selectively restore files that were affected. Similarly, I meet a lot of customers that have pain around collaboration. Maybe it's people at different branch offices, and now more than ever, it's remote workers, and they want to be able to collaborate effectively. So it's very common to bring up Nasuni for that use case as well. We even bring up Nasuni when we talk to companies that do a lot of mergers and acquisition, right? It's that notion that you have a new data center and you want to get the data out of there as fast as possible. I'm sure Tom will touch on this, but Nasuni's a great use case there. I think my favorite use case, though, is just when we talk to customers that are on a hybrid cloud journey and they're having a lot of pain around unstructured files. Maybe they tried to shove them into SharePoint or Teams, or they put them out in Azure files. But all of a sudden, they're having scale issues, they're having security issues, and they also have a lot of performance issues because now they're not performing as if they're out on the edge or in that corporate intranet. And this is where Nasuni's really that 800-pound gorilla. They've been known for this for some time, and it's really where they excel, right? So if we go back to those 5 points, the first one was security, right? Tom's going to talk about how they handle security. The second point, recoverability, I touched on it a little bit, but they really excel in this area. Simplicity is also really important. You guys wear a lot of hats. We're not going to show off the GUI today, but people are always amazed that a product with global file locking, with literally no limits on volume directory size, with edge-like performance anywhere you want it, they're always surprised how easy it is to administer and maintain Nasuni. Quality of support is something we also rattle our saber about quite a bit. I'm sure Tom will talk about their net promoter scores and how well their support is received by customers. And then finally, it's just that notion that business outcomes matter. Once again, if you're having pain around recovering your files, backing up files, just dealing with those files, collaborating with those files, moving them around, or just being on that hybrid cloud journey, once again, Nasuni delivers on a lot of outcomes and they do it really well. So once again, I think that's why I like talking about it so much, is what they do and how they approached it really closely aligns with all of those tenets that we like to talk about at Eagle. So with that, Tom, I'll hand it over to you. You can take over the slides.
Brian, you did a great job stealing my thunder.
Thank you. I tried not to too much, but you know how it goes.
Very well done, and I'll try to fill in the gaps, and I'll echo what you said. Please, I'm a good chump. Try to stump the chump. Certainly ask as many questions as you want. And I'll just give a quick high level on Nasuni as a corporation. Nasuni actually stands for NAS Unified. That's where we got the name Nasuni, and the original concept was to unify all these disparate services that previously you needed multiple solutions for file servers or NAS. So the NAS itself, the backup, the disaster recovery, the replication of arrays across sites to facilitate cross-office file sharing, the Riverbed WAN acceleration to make that replication faster. All those services that organizations struggled with, we thought, let's build one solution that can do all of that, and that's really the genesis behind the name Nasuni. And today we have 1,000 customers in site. We expect to cross that threshold by the end of the year. We have hundreds of petabytes now under management. We've got, as Brian said, an NPS score of near 90, which is really off the charts for any enterprise software. We're very proud that Gartner's Peer Insights website, which allows Gartner clients to rate their vendors anonymously, we have more product reviews now on that Gartner site than any other solution in our space. We're up to 62 now, and we have the highest score, 4.7 out of 5 of any solution in the file data services or hybrid cloud storage category. So we've got a lot of success. It's why we have a near 99% customer retention rate. Once customers sign on with us, they really appreciate the quality of support, the quality of the partners like Eagle that we bring to bear on the accounts, and we really make sure they're successful with our solution. And we're also, all of the components of Nasuni can be pulled down from the AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud marketplaces. So we're very strong partners now with all three of the major public cloud hyperscalers. So you can see we've got a roster now of really name brand customers. Many of these customers are now at petabyte scale with Nasuni. So, we're very well proven at this point. We've been on the market quite a while. We're nearing version 10 of our software. But really, most of our growth has exploded in the last 4 to 5 years as cloud has caught up with the initial concept that we had. in building a platform that could really truly tap the power of the public cloud. And we also have some customers also in the local region. We chose some of the bigger customers. So Kiewit, I think Kiewit, Meredith, and Burns and McDonnell are now around 2 petabytes each with Nasuni deployed. So again, a lot of proven success right in your local area. You can see we do very well in the architecture, engineering, and construction industries because of the need to share files across lots of sites, lots of job sites. But we also have strength in healthcare, in law firms, in insurance companies, financial services, and media. Those are really some of the, in manufacturing, those are really the top verticals for us. And they all have a couple things in common, as Brian said: explosive growth of data, the need to protect that data, and then also the need to collaborate and share on that data across multiple locations. So let's now shift gears to talk about really what the challenges are and what Nasuni addresses. So Brian, I think you spoke about some of these things already. What we saw in the early days of Nasuni before the company was started was, and this was before the day of the cloud, before the days of the cloud, every enterprise was struggling with explosive amounts of file data growth. Gartner, IDC, every major analyst says that about 80% of all the data in today's enterprise is unstructured file data, and that's what's growing the fastest. And trying to keep up with that growth by buying more and more hardware on-prem and backing it up and doing DR just makes things very costly and complex. Now you pair that with the fact that many enterprises have a distributed workforce where you need to collaborate across locations and tap the expertise of workers in many locations. And then you have increasingly aggressive security threats. So pre-cloud, ransomware wasn't a thing quite then, but certainly there were malware and different attacks that were threatening organizations. And of course, the typical data loss, somebody deleted a file by mistake or overwrote somebody's version. Those were all the struggles that we saw pre-cloud. And we felt that if we were going to build a solution that was going to really tap the power of the cloud, it had to have 3 things. It had to provide effortless scale, allow you to address the needs of growing file data, growing numbers of users, and also growing numbers of locations with ease, and being able to scale on demand without any supply chain issues, without procuring hardware. If you just needed more capacity in any location, you could just add it. We felt that was a clear design tenet that had to be addressed. Second was you had to have security built in. It couldn't be an afterthought. Again, backup was it's too hard to keep pace with growing file data. Now with ransomware coming out, you had to have a solution that could really provide restore points up to the minute and super fast recovery, and also have that built-in ransomware protection as well. And then the third key point was you had to have fast edge performance. Moving data to the cloud, people automatically think, well, now I'm going to have latency and bandwidth issues. I'm going to be subject to how fast I can retrieve data from the cloud. And that's really dependent on my network speeds and how far I am from a cloud region. So we felt we had to have built-in edge performance to ensure that you could have fast access to data anywhere you needed it. End users and applications don't want to give up that local file server or NAS performance just to have the other advantages of going cloud. So those are really the 3 key design tenets, and that's what we built. And now you look at other solutions that have tried to really lift and shift older technologies, legacy technologies from on-prem to the cloud. They don't really address those 3 key issues. From a scale standpoint, a lot of the solutions that are available today still have limits. They have volume limits, file size limits, number of snapshot limits. And because of those limits, you end up having to create multiple file systems, and you end up repeating the same thing you have today on-prem. You've got silos of NAS, silos of file servers. Each of them has to get backed up separately. You have to have DR for each. You have all the administrative overhead around that. And you're not really tapping the advantage of the scale that the cloud provides. You're just moving the silos you had on-prem now and creating cloud silos.
Yep, Tom.
From a secure, yeah, sure.
Don't
Brian.
mean to interrupt you, but just
No.
anecdotally, a couple of years ago, we met with a customer that was looking at Azure files, and they were a petabyte scale customer. And once they found out they were literally going to have to manage 100 Azure Files namespaces, it was really eye-opening to them. And that's what got them to start listening to, us talk about Nasuni. And they're a Nasuni customer now.
Yep.
But yeah, the devil's in the details when you look at those other services for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously Microsoft is a great partner of ours, and we are driving a ton of data into Azure Blob Object Storage, which is a different type of storage account. But you're right, Brian. Azure Files is often one of the solutions looked at when you're looking at moving, especially Windows file servers to the cloud. You look through that big list of Azure services, you search for file, and you see Azure Files. But to your point, it's got the 100 terabyte limit if you want just local redundancy. If you need GRS, global redundant storage, that's down to 5 terabytes. So to your point, if you've got a petabyte of data, or even 500 terabytes or 100 terabytes, you end up having to manage lots and lots of these accounts. And then it gets even more complex when you need edge performance. And that's really the last bullet. All of the solutions that are cloud native are offering managed file shares just in the cloud. And so again, you're subject now to latency and bandwidth issues when you want to connect. If you want to have that local performance, then a lot of them offer what we call bolt-on file caching, which are again typically dated technologies that have been ported, and they don't, for example, they don't support multi-site write. They only support multi-site read. So if I want users that I want them to be able to write files, the same files in different locations, I really can't do that. Or if I want to have fast file sync, based on intelligence of file system auditing and knowing which sites need the new files first, they don't have that either. So you've got users waiting around, right? So these are, this is what we say is good enough, good enough. It's often not. And I think your example of that customer that, was on Azure Files is now on Azure Blob and Nasuni is a good example of that. Once you start to look at these solutions in more detail, you realize these 3 key things are not addressed. Azure Files, for example, has a 200 snapshot limit. So if you want up to the minute snapshots, you're not going to get it with that. If you have to retain, a day's, if you have to retain versions every day, you're going to run out of snapshots pretty quickly. And then you have to look at then adding traditional file backup back into the mix. And now you're back to the same, backup issues you had when you were on-prem. So this is really why, we said, look, let's get we used to say the best of both worlds. Now it's the better of both worlds. Let's leverage the durability, the low cost, the scale of the cloud, but combine that with the performance at the edge of traditional NAS and file servers. And then let's surround that with even better control and security. And that's what we did with Nasuni. We weren't calling it hybrid cloud storage back then. I think we were starting with file data services, but now we're adopting the category that Gartner is using. They're calling it hybrid cloud storage, and we're now being noted by Gartner as a leader in that space. So we're just adopting that term, and it really describes well what we do. The ability to have this file system that lives in infinite object storage, but then have that security and performance of on-prem NAS and file servers. So you get really operational excellence because you have one global file system, one namespace to manage, all centrally. You get great user productivity because now users get the same performance they had before, but the ability to share files across lots of locations at high speed. And you really have better than backup data protection, ransomware mitigation built in, so you can really avoid the risk as well. So those are really the 3 business outcomes we're driving: is operational excellence for IT, better productivity for the end user community, and then of course the security folks love our whole story around making file servers and file systems more secure.
Yeah, and Tom, I just want to second the part about edge and local performance. That's something that becomes a big pain point for folks when they use just traditional cloud services. And, it's not a new problem. 10 years ago, people would implement VDI environments, and if the environment didn't perform better, right,
Back to desktops.
Then that thick client, there were riots in the streets. And
Yep.
we see this with customers when they try to move their files out as well.
Yeah, it's a good analogy, Brian. I spent before Nasuni, I was at a company called Unidesk in the VDI space, and we saw that all the time. If you could not deliver the same local desktop performance with virtual desktops, then users revolted. And again, the same is true with file shares. File shares are really an extension of the desktop, and they demand that fast performance. So how do we deliver all this? Well, that's what we've done with Nasuni. So it's we call it the Nasuni File Data Platform. And we provide effortless scale because we allow you to choose the object storage of your choice. As I mentioned, Azure Blob Object Storage is often the one we see paired with Nasuni, but we have a lot of customers also on Amazon S3 and also Google Cloud Object Storage as well. And we'll talk more about how we do that. Then when they have the built-in data security, we'll talk about how we eliminate the need for traditional file backup. And then we also have that fast edge performance wherever you need it. And an important point to make here is that when we say edge performance, that edge can be on-prem or it can be in the cloud. We see a lot of our customers now have cloud native applications that need file shares, but they need to be able to span cloud regions. They don't want to get locked in just to US, Azure US2 Virginia. They want to have file data accessible to workloads that are running maybe in US West, in San Fran, or in the central region. So we have the ability to make all those files readily accessible in any cloud region as well as any on-prem location. And so the nice thing about Nasuni is you're not changing any of your apps or your user workflows. If you use drive mappings today, if you have scripts in IT that are designed to use UNC paths, all that stays the same. There's no change to the end user or application workflows. But now you get all your data, all your silos consolidated in one place. And we're seeing that's really a benefit now for those thinking about artificial intelligence, AI, data intelligence. How do I extract value from my file data when it's scattered across the enterprise? Now with Nasuni, you're consolidating it all in one place. Makes it very easy to run AWS analytics, Azure machine learning, or other AI tools against your data to really get the full value of your unstructured assets. So let's peel back the onion a little bit and look at how we do this. So we have a hybrid cloud architecture that starts at its core with the first file system designed to live in object storage. That was one of the first patents that Nasuni had. Was we figured out a way to have the entire inode structure of a file system be self-described and living inside object storage. Other file systems like NetApp Waffle and ONTAP designed to live in hardware. Windows NTFS, designed to live on hardware. We built the first file system, we call it UniFS, that really can scale entirely in object storage. So you pick your Azure Blob, your Amazon S3, your Google Cloud Object Storage, and then we'll instantiate a file system using object storage. And the benefits there are you get unlimited scale, you get low cost, because object storage is the lowest cost type of storage there is in the cloud. You also get to use a very cool tier of object storage because all the performances you're going to see, all the access to the file shares occurs at the edge through our edge caching virtual machines. So you don't have to have a fast tier of object storage on the back end. So a lot of customers ask right away, well, can I do tiering? With Nasuni, the need for tiering is obviated. It's obsolete. We put all the data, all the metadata, all the snapshots are stored on your coolest tier of object storage, and then we cache to the edge just a small subset of data, active data that's actively used. So you get the low cost of object storage on the back end, you get the scale, you also get the durability of object storage. So for example, with Azure Blob Object Storage, you can choose from LRS, ZRS, or GRS redundancy. And that gives you, for example, GRS will give you up to 6 redundant copies of all that data spread across multiple Azure zones or Azure regions. So you get up to 6 air-gapped copies of your data in case one cloud region isn't accessible. That's way better than you get today with local backups and maybe one on-prem and one off-site copy. Brian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've already had 4 or 5 questions roll in, but they were really best for this under the hood slide. I'll try to organize them properly because I think some answer the others. I got one quick and easy question. So do you guys support NFS and SMB?
Yes. So we're multi-protocol. So SMB CIFS, NFS support, FTPS, FTP, and even HTTPS access is all provided to access the file data. That's all done for our edge virtual machines, which you see at the bottom. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I'll let you ask the other questions too, Brian.
Yeah, so a couple questions are all kind of related to the same thing, and it gets back to something that I often say to customers that sparks the same question. Nasuni is the only solution in our portfolio where we are comfortable saying that you don't need a third-party backup product to protect it, right? And that's always a big win in their book because that's, once again, the biggest pain is that 80% of unstructured files that they're tasked with
Yeah,
protecting. So why is it that we don't need third-party backup with Nasuni, and how do you architect redundancy?
absolutely. Yeah, so that's a good setup for the second point on security, where you see the infinite immutable snapshots on the right. And it's funny because we run our user groups every quarter, and we always ask the question, "What's your favorite Nasuni feature?" And we expect them to say, "Well, unlimited SMB and NFS file shares, in the cloud." And the answer that comes back is always, "I don't have to do backup anymore for my file data." That's always the number one most loved feature of Nasuni, and the reason why we can do that is because we have a versioning file system. That was the other design point of building a file system in the cloud and object storage, was we wanted to be able to provide unlimited snapshots. We always felt that NetApp had a great idea with snaps, but you were limited to how many snaps you could take because of the size of the array. And the more snaps you took, the more it cut into the usable space of that box. So the benefit of using cloud object storage is you have this infinite low cost, durable back end. You can take snapshots forever, and you can take them as often as you want. So we allow you to take snapshots every few minutes. Every delta change is captured by one of our Nasuni edges and then written to the cloud object storage as an immutable version. So just the small amount of data, the block level data that's changed, is stored as its own immutable version. And basically, we create a timeline of the file system that will then be incremented every time a snapshot occurs. So you have all your Nasuni edges in different locations are taking snaps as the data changes and storing those gold copies. Those gold, the changes become the gold copy in object storage. So you have this unlimited timeline of recovery points that you can roll back to at any point. And that's why, our customers don't need file backup anymore, because you've got now recovery points as often as every few minutes. You'll always have a healthy snapshot to roll back to because they're written as worm, immutable. Once a snapshot's committed, it can't be overwritten, it can't be corrupted or infected by ransomware. And the process to go back is very, simple. I think, Brian, you mentioned the demo. I wish I could show you the Nasuni Management Console. We have a version catalog browser. We'll let you just go through all the different timestamps and say, I want to roll this, this version of the file system back, or I want to do a granular restore of an individual file to this point in time, because ransomware hit me at 4:00 and I want to go back to the 3:58 snapshot. Done. And the reason why it's so fast is because all we're doing is moving a pointer from the current manifest back to the previous point in time, and then we'll recache the active data to the edge. So that's why we can recover petabytes of data in seconds. It's not because we're defying physics; it's because we're just shifting pointers in the cloud, and then we're recaching data, the data that's actively used to the edge. So it's only a small subset of those versions that need to be brought back to any of the edge appliances where those access points are. So a lot of talk there, tech talk, but that's how we do infinite versioning. It's why you don't need file backup. And then you spoke about, how do we do resiliency? Well, because those snapshots are stored in object storage, and you're getting multiple copies of anything that's stored in object storage automatically made, you get that built-in air gapping of the snapshots as well as the primary copy as well. So that's where you're getting that, better than file backup data protection, more recovery points, more copies that are air gapped, and faster recovery times.
So Tom, kind of in a nutshell on the resiliency, you're saying customers can choose their level of redundancy as it relates to the object storage on the back end.
You got it.
Can you expand more on like maybe some different use cases there?
Yeah, and I think we see some customers that don't have as stringent policies will choose, for example, Azure Blob LRS. That's locally redundant storage. That's 3 copies in the same Azure region of your data. Other customers, like in financial services or healthcare, that have more stringent policies might choose ZRS, which is zone redundant, or GRS, which is globally redundant storage for Azure Blob. Zone redundant creates up to, I think, 3 copies across Azure zones. GRS creates up to 6 copies across multiple Azure regions. So if something happens in US East 2, you can still get to your data or your recovery points in another Azure region. So of course you pay more for that as you add more durability, but still the overall cost relative to, solutions that require expensive disk storage is still going to be much, much lower. Again, because object is just a lower cost type of account.
Okay. I've got two more questions. One, I think you're going to get to. They want to understand more about the edge appliance and how that
Yep.
works. So I think we'll table that one. The other one's just what versions of SMB are supported, Tom?
It's pretty much every one of them, I believe, from early 2s up to 3.x of SMB CIFs. It's funny, we just answered that question in an RFP. I can check on that after and get back to you on that one. But
I couldn't remember either, Tom.
Pretty much every version of the NFS and SMB protocol.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, I'll stop interrupting you for a second, and I'm sure we'll get to how the edge appliance works.
No, these are great. These are great. Keep them coming. Ask as much as you like. Okay, so the last thing we'll talk about, we talked about scale, we talked about security. Let's talk about the edge performance. So how do we provide that, local NAS-like experience? So Nasuni edge appliances are these lightweight Linux virtual machines that you can spin up in any on-prem location or in the cloud. We support pretty much every virtual environment: ESX vSphere, Hyper-V, Nutanix Acropolis Hypervisor. We support all the cloud hyperscaler compute instances, so Google Cloud Compute, Azure compute instances, as well as AWS. So you can have as many of these as you want. We don't charge for them. You can spin up as many as you want. Typically, we see customers deploy one edge appliance in any office that needs high-speed access or any cloud region that needs high-speed access. And what each edge appliance does is it will cache from object storage copies of just the active data set. Typically, just rough sizing-wise, it's about 2 to 5% of the overall workload in the cloud. So if you had 100 terabytes stored in cloud object storage, then the edge appliance would only need to size around 2 to 5 terabytes. Again, depending on the I/O requirements, depending on how many users you have, and what the size of the active working set is. And that's where Nasuni will work with Eagle and our partners to figure out what the optimal size is for each of these edge appliances. The edge appliances give you a really great opportunity to right-size your environment and get rid of all this excess hardware, because typically today you're coming from a NAS or file server where all the data has to be stored on-prem in each location. Now we're reducing that footprint down to just that 2 to 5% of that, and then all the data, of course, is being stored in object storage in the back end. So each edge virtual machine really performs two functions. One is to cache that active data from the cloud. If the cache gets full and a user requests a file that's not in the cache, it'll evict the oldest data, and then it'll pull that file back from object storage. Again, if we do a really good job of sizing these, and we know this because we look across our customer base, we can tell how good a job we're doing based on the metrics that we capture. We generate about 98.5% of all reads come from cache, as long as we size each of those edge virtual machines about the right size. So that means that your egress fees coming from the cloud are greatly minimized, because only 1.5% of the time do you have to go back to cloud and pull data back into cache. So that's the one. Yep. Go ahead, Brian. Question?
Oh, Tom, I'll just add, when I talk to customers about this and this model sinks in, it becomes really appealing, because you go from needing perhaps an all-flash SAN for your VM and random IO, and then a huge NAS, right? Hopefully with some flash. It's very difficult to have all flash. They can take that 3 or 5%, put that money into their tier 1 all-flash SAN, and get rid of all that NAS iron that's sitting on the floor.
You got it. And that's why we see a lot of times customers are telling us that their performance is actually greater with Nasuni, because now they're able to leverage pure flash arrays, HP Nimble, and other all-flash arrays, because we need so little of that footprint. They can actually get faster performance for their file data now than they could before, when it was all sitting on, like you said, on older big iron.
Yeah, it's really appealing.
Yep. So that's one function that each virtual machine, each edge serves. The other function is to snapshot data as it changes, right? Based on the snapshot schedule you set up. So if you want snaps every 5 minutes, then every 5 minutes, the edge virtual machine is going to capture just the delta changes. We're going to compress them down So that's one other important point is 100 terabytes of end user file shares does not equal 100 terabytes in the back end object storage. We typically see data reduction of about 40% on the front end to what you need on the back end. So so you'll need a lot less back end object storage usually than you'll need front end capacity for the file shares. So the edge virtual machine will compress down that workload or that snapshot. We'll encrypt it with AES encryption using keys under the customer's control. And then we'll chunk up that data into objects and then send that encrypted and reduced across the wire back to the object storage in the back end, where that gold copy now will sit as that immutable version. So, and we have an orchestration platform now that's coordinating all those edge appliances in different locations, sending their snapshots back into object storage to create that sequential timeline and provide you with that version history you can restore at any point. Once a snapshot's been committed, oh, go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. VoIP delay is the worst. I had a question related to what you're talking about right now. Can you actually maintain infinite retention? Is that actually possible?
Yeah, we have customers that have never pruned their snapshots, and they have snapshots dating back 8 years now. So if you want to keep your snaps forever, again, it's just the delta changes, and those are all stored again on low cost object storage. So you can have retention going back as far as you want. In fact, that customer that I'm talking about, just for the first time in 8 years, exceeded just had their object storage backend exceed the amount of capacity as the front end facing file shares. Because again, with the compression and all the just the delta changes, it was actually, I think they had 280 terabytes front end facing file shares, and they only had, they just passed the 280 terabyte mark on the back end in the cloud just recently.
With
so just
8
give you an
years of
idea
retention.
of the efficiency of that. Yeah.
Wow. All right. And then one other question. I don't know if you're going to get to it on this slide. I mentioned global file locking at the beginning. We haven't touched on it much, but someone was curious how that works.
Absolutely. Actually, that was the next thing. So good.
Perfect.
Give me good softballs here, Brian. Once the edge appliance snapshots a change into object storage, that change will then be propagated to any other edge appliance that's sharing the same files. So you can imagine this is why we're so valuable in manufacturing, in architecture and construction. Anyone sharing CAD files across lots of job sites or across manufacturing, design, test, and build. It's these big CAD files. You want to have the same, current version everywhere. So there's two actually technologies that we have that are part of our orchestration platform. One is global file lock, as you just mentioned, Brian. What if I have users in different locations that are, on two different edge appliances, but both edge appliances are presenting the same file share from the cloud backend, and they want to make changes to the files at the same time? Our global file lock will guard against that. It basically takes the concept of a local file lock on a NAS box, but extends it worldwide at scale. So you can will only allow, if you choose, to have one user at a time making changes, and you'll get the same kind of message you get if you're trying to access the same file on a local NAS box. Sorry, Brian already has this file open for editing, Tom. If you want to open a read-only copy, you can do that, or you can wait until he's finished. So you'll get that same kind of behavior, but now it's extended worldwide with our global file lock. So you can really have the confidence of working on files across lots of locations without worrying about version conflict or, overriding each other's changes. The other technology that's part of that also we call global file acceleration, and that's intelligent data propagation. So Brian, let's say that you're making a change on a file. There's 4 other users, me and 3 others in other locations that are also working on the same file. But there's 8 other locations that really aren't that active collaborating on it. Our global file acceleration is intelligent enough to know, based on file system auditing, and then we apply machine learning on top of that, that any change you make or any new file you create should get propagated to me and the other 3 users first before hitting the more inactive sites. And by adding that, we've really increased the speed of data propagation. We actually can thank Burns & McDonnell, one of our customers I mentioned before. They really helped us, beta test and really exercise this new capability. They were one of the first users of that. and now are beneficiaries of that. So we've greatly increased data propagation and file sync speeds because of that, really allowing you to have ultra fast file sharing across lots of locations, based on that intelligence. So I think that hopefully does that answer the question, you think, Brian?
Yep, the questions have cooled. I think we've got them all out of the way.
Okay. And just one more thing I'll add about that orchestration. That's all at cloud scale, right? So that's a really a SaaS service that you don't have to pay for, or you get as part of your Nasuni subscription. That global file lock, that global file acceleration, telemetry, all that is a cloud scale service that's automatically maintained and updated by Nasuni. With all the competitor solutions, you own that function yourself. You have to spin up control path servers. You have to own the scale of those servers, the data protection of those servers, the availability of those servers. So you have to buy, basically HA gear to try to match what we deliver through the power of the cloud for free. So that's a big, consideration when you're looking at total cost of ownership with Nasuni. You're getting that cloud scale orchestration, that control path service is all built in and delivered as part of your subscription. And then the last thing I think I wanted to mention also, which we haven't talked about on the security side, we had a lot of customers coming to us, Brian, and saying, "Hey, I love the fact that you've got snaps every 5 minutes. I can restore data really fast. But what if ransomware hits me, and I don't know about it until end of the day or a day later? It's nice that I have all these recovery points, but if I have to go back to last night's snapshot because I didn't know about the infection and people kept on working on the data, I'm going to lose a day's worth of work or a week's worth of work if I have to go back to an earlier snapshot. Can you give me some early warning? Can you let me know right away if you detect ransomware?" So that's what led to us to building our ransomware detection service, which occurs at the edge. So that's something else that our edge appliances can do now, is detect live in real time if ransomware has potentially hit your shares and notifies you right away. So you can take action and leverage the fact that we have these recovery points of every few minutes. So we introduced that about a year ago. We've had a lot of success, a lot of upsell on that. We have about an 80% attach rate of that add-on. But then customers came back and said, "Well, I'm glad I know about it, but can you automatically stop the attack? If you sense there's something happening, can you block the user's IP address and cut them off so that the attacks don't keep happening?" So we added that as a mitigation policy, as an enhancement. And we now have an automatic mitigation policy that will disconnect the IP address. That's the first mitigation policy that we've added, and more are coming. So that was added, I think, a few versions ago of that, of the ransomware protection add-on. And then customers came back and said, "Well, geez, the snapshots that you're taking, when the attack happened, can you give us a targeted restore feature that will restore only the infected files? I don't want to roll everybody back if they weren't infected, because I could lose a bunch of data. Just roll back the infected files to the last healthy snapshot." So that feature just came out a few months ago. It's called Targeted Restore. And with a click of a button, it lets the IT administrator roll back just the infected files or directories or volumes to the previous healthy snapshot to get you as close as you can back to before that ransomware event happened. So that's all now part of our ransomware protection value add service. So we've really been enhancing that based on customer requests. So hopefully that gives you some insight also that we're very driven by our customers and we are responsive. We're an agile development organization, so we're able to modify our roadmap. Of course, we have strategic things we want to do, but when customers have good ideas or come to us with feedback at user groups, we take it to heart and we deliver what's being asked for.
Yeah, Tom, and I'd love to add that Jeremy, the local Nasuni engineer, has an excellent demo of that where he launches a ransomware attack on a Nasuni namespace. And, the whole story ends with the files recovered and this excellent little report you can send to upper management. So it's really impressive.
Yeah, I know he loves giving that demo. So we're happy to set that up as a follow-up to this webinar. So yeah, not too much more to talk about. I think we've covered a lot of the tech in depth. Brian, unless there's more questions, but I think the last few things we're going to talk about, one thing I know customers are always concerned about is migrating. There's always this fear of migration. How long is it going to take? Am I going to lose data as I do it? The good news is that Nasuni, in conjunction with you, our partners Eagle, we're experts at this. We've done it, hundreds and hundreds of times at major scale. I'll give one example. Microsoft themselves is a customer of Nasuni. Microsoft's LinkedIn division builds all the LinkedIn learning videos and all the project files that go into those videos. It's now 11 petabytes of data is all stored on Nasuni, of course, backed by Azure Object Storage, because it is Microsoft. And they had an urgent deadline to get their studio in the cloud. They called it the Studio in the Cloud project. And we were able to help them migrate 7.5 petabytes in 6 months. So we're really good at it. We've got great tools, certainly with the discovery that Eagle can do to give us information on ACLs and permissions. We can do everything from migrating data as is. We can teach you how to fish, so you can do the rest of it. We can whatever it takes. We have the project management expertise also if you need help there. So we've done it from 20 terabytes to 20 petabytes. So again, we can meet your timelines without any loss of data, without any business interruption. I think TGI Fridays talks about how none of their end users even were aware that there was a cutover. It just happened seamlessly. And I think the CIO asked our IT manager, "Did you ever cut over?" He said, "Yeah, it was all done over the weekend. Nobody even noticed." So lots of examples around how easy it is to move your data to Nasuni in your cloud backend. And then the other thing I'll just offer also, because again, people think the cloud could be expensive. We're also experts at building comparative value propositions to help you understand the full TCO of whether you're looking at an on-prem refresh, another cloud solution, or you're looking at Nasuni. We want to be very upfront about all the costs that go into a Nasuni deployment. So it's not just the Nasuni license, which is a per terabyte per year subscription, but it's also the infrastructure cost of the Nasuni edge appliances, which will help you size. And it's also the cost of the object storage you're going to use behind Nasuni. We'll take all those three ingredients, which is really the cost of our environment, and we'll compare that to what else is needed to provide equivalent functionality, or try to provide equivalent functionality as Nasuni. So here's an example of where we compared Azure Blob and Nasuni to Azure Files for a customer. This was done at petabyte scale. And we'll give you all the data and all the details that go into this, so you can see, hey, I'm just giving you a model that lets you compare the two solutions. And we'll do it on a hard cost basis, which you'll see up in the upper right corner. And then we'll also try to quantify the value of Nasuni's technology around productivity, faster recoveries, faster file sync, lower ransomware risk, and then of course the IT efficiencies you get from having a single global namespace that can be managed from one single pane of glass. So we worked with the customer to quantify these numbers. These numbers actually came from a workshop we did with the customer. So they provided us with their own internal costs. And this is something that we could do in conjunction with you. We give you the model, and then we invite you to help us refine it to make sure it reflects your costs. So many times we say, look, let's make sure we do this and the technical due diligence in parallel, because it doesn't do any good to try to bring a solution in if you can't sell it internally and show the business case for it. So we're happy to work this exercise with you. And that's another call to action I think we had at the end was, migration workshop or build one of these business cases.
Yeah, Tom, and I'll second that. A lot of customers are a little hesitant, right, to trust vendor TCO, but what you guys do, you do it right. It's very collaborative. All the data's out there. And I've been in situations where customers are like, well, my boss doesn't see value in those cost savings, or I don't agree with that number. And you guys adhere to the way they see their cost savings, right? So it's actually a worthy exercise that's been really beneficial for a lot of customers.
Yep, excellent, and happy to do that with you. And sometimes we do multiple. Customer will ask us, well, can you help me build a business case against refreshing my Isilon or my NetApp or my Windows file servers with all the backup and DR? We'll do that, and then they'll ask for a comparison against another cloud solution. So we can help you do that. So I think just in closing, on our side in Nasuni, BNIM is a joint customer between Eagle and Nasuni. We're very pleased to be working with this company in the local greater KC area. And like many AEC firms, their challenge was how to share Adobe Creative Suite, AutoCAD, Revit files, and then all the other back office files around each of their projects, all the office files. How do we share that across our multiple locations to give our designers, our project leads, our architects and engineers seamless access to all these files through one namespace. And that's what we're doing. They chose Google Cloud as the back end, and we're now in the process of rolling this out for over 30 terabytes across nine of their national offices. And I know we had some healthcare customers that had signed up for this webinar, so I threw in a couple other healthcare examples. Austin Radiological in Texas is the largest imaging provider to all the hospitals across Texas. They've been a customer now for 5 years, and they chose Azure as their backend. They had a large Microsoft Azure consumption agreement they wanted to draw down against, and so they've been steadily growing their Nasuni footprint. They're now over 700 terabytes in 17 locations, and all of their radiological exams now are stored on Nasuni. And then lastly, another use case we see, especially in healthcare, is not just the radiology or PACS images, but it's also the unstructured research data and that a lot of the researchers need as part of grants. Johns Hopkins is a good example of that. Of course, they're the leader in healthcare funding nationally. So they have lots and lots of research projects going on within Johns Hopkins Medicine. And they were telling us they had, aging isolon. They were stuffing, project files on drives under desks of researchers. They really wanted to consolidate it all in one central IT. And they also have a very strategic relationship with Microsoft and have a large Azure consumption agreement they wanted to draw down against. So they're using Nasuni with Azure Blob as their back end to support their clinicians, faculty, and researchers. They're now over 300 terabytes of research data and growing pretty quickly. So again, we can handle a lot of different use cases, and I think the next step, Brian, I think we talked about this. Would love to do an estimated business impact, that TCO comparison. I know Jeremy's chomping at the bit to do more product demos or tech deep dives, or we could do a joint migration workshop with Eagle and our customers to talk about how fast we can move you over if there's deadlines you're working against.
Yeah, excellent job, Tom. I can see why they wanted you on this webinar. Yeah, and just to kind of bookend something I had on a slide earlier is I think some of the most exciting technologies I get to speak about are the ones that actually are mature and transformative at the same time. Such a rare combo. And you kind of spoke to it earlier. You guys were a little bit ahead of the curve, right? And you're kind of really hitting critical mass right now. And I hope we did that message justice, right? About all the capabilities you bring to bear. But it's also worth mentioning that some customers just adopt Nasuni because they want a hybrid cloud platform and they don't want to hemorrhage money, right? And the bonus is they get all these other capabilities. So sometimes we see that a perfectly simple use case like that as well.
Yeah, well said, Brian. I think cost savings is top of mind with every IT organization that I talk to. So sometimes it is that simple. We've made the decision. We have a cloud initiative. We're going Azure or AWS or Google, and we want to move as many workloads as we can into the cloud. We want to be able to draw down any of our commits. And with Nasuni and the object storage that we use, we've done so much business with Microsoft. They actually count both of those, even Nasuni's subscription, against your Mac agreement. So there's maybe a lot of times there's that free money to work with, and sometimes it is that simple. Just modernizing my NAS. Not to mention all the other things we talked about.
Yeah, and that's another good point. I've actually met with customers that have just simply said, I need to find smart ways to draw down against my Azure or AWS agreement, right? And Nasuni obviously comes up in those conversations. So excellent point.